Good afternoon. The July 5th meeting of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust will be in order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the June 21st meeting.
Move approval.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes. Are there comments or questions? Voting? Minutes are approved. Next item is the consent docket.
Move the consent docket, subject to individual consideration.
Have a motion and a second on the consent docket. Are there matters to be considered individually? Hearing none, voting. Consent docket's approved. The next item is the concurrence docket. There's one item.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item 4, which is the concurrence docket. Are there questions or comments? Hearing none, voting please. Concurrence docket's approved. Next item is the acceptance of temporary and permanent easements.
Second.
Motion and a second to accept the easements. There's a couple of them. They have to be considered separately, or can we? I think I ask it every week. There are 3 of them, actually. Have a motion and a second to accept the easements. Are there questions or comments? Hearing none, voting please. Easements are approved. The next item on the agenda is the reports, and it's the receipt of a presentation on the Southwest area water improvements.
Mr. Chairman, coming up on your screens is a quickly constructed report about pressure problems that we've seen in the Southwest area and what we've done about those and what we intend to do next. Debbie, let's go to the next slide, please. So while we're having peak demand, you know that it's been hot and dry, and we've had little sprinkles which have kept the peak down just a bit. But while most customers see a little bit lower pressure during these peak demand times, parts of our Southwest service area have had poor pressure, and the staff has been working to correct that through a variety of actions. So I'll tell you a little bit today about what water demand has looked like, what happened in the water system, and show you the capital program for the area, tell you what we've done, and suggest some possible actions that will help resolve the problem. It is important to us. That next slide, please. So we've been showing policymakers areas of the city that we want to target for pressure improvement, and the Southwest target areas generally along Highway 40 at Sarah Road and points east and west of that, generally along Reno. On this slide, I'd like to point out that to the right, you see a red dot. That's Booster Station 9, between just east of Council Road at Reno. It's a key player in service in this area. Also, a key player is Booster Station 14, which you see is at roughly Mustang Road and I-40 or Reno. And then the Reno tank farther west between Frisco and Cemetery. While we have not had wholesale water outages in the area, we've seen less than desirable pressure in some neighborhoods. We want to fix that. Volume of water used over the last 3 weeks has run over 150 up to 178 million gallons a day. That is about 11 million gallons a day under our all-time peak, which is concerning because really we're not satisfied with what we've been doing Southwest. The plant flow rates are on the right-hand side of this page. The green is Lake Draper, has become our workhorse plant, has been regularly putting out 100 million gallons a day, peaking at about 120. The Hefner plant, which of course is smaller, is running full out at capacity. I should tell you that these graphs show 48 hours worth of time ending at 6 a.m. this morning. But they're typical of what we're seeing in the system. These are tank elevations. What's important to us about that is the water system ideally floats on the tanks. We're pumping into tanks, and the tanks go up and go down as demand increases and decreases. So they're important to us. On the left side of the page, you see our more in-town tanks. The green line is our large Colfax pumping station that pumps most of the water that leaves the Hefner plant. You can see that tank that's been going up over the last 48 hours, and that's a good thing. We're pleased to have the Colfax tanks holding a reserve of about 10 million gallons as they are at this time. The other three tanks in that graph are all inner-city tanks that float up and down. We actually purposefully changed their water, the amount of water they hold, to keep the water in those tanks fresh. You're seeing there an operational attitude. These graphs, by the way, are from our SCADA system. On the right-hand side, you see graphs that are a little more concerning. The green line on the right-hand side is the water tank on Reno that I showed you between Frisco and Cemetery. We have set an emergency pump at this location. The emergency pump was functioning very well, went out, froze up. You can see the decline in the green line and the coming back up as that pump has been restored to full operation. The blue line is the MacArthur tank near Northwest 10th and MacArthur, which is a factor, but a minor player, we think, in this issue. Before I go on, I want to tell you that we do always get ready for summer. This is not a surprise. We're intimately aware that the water system will have a peak like this. So we do a lot of heavy maintenance in the wintertime. We order supplies to get ready for this time frame. And we make certain that our construction contracts don't get in the way of our delivery of water during this peak demand period. Go ahead. For some time, we've been working on getting more water to the western side of the city. We've completed pipeline coming from the Lake Draper plant to Southwest 134th and Penn. We have 4 miles in construction from that location to Southwest 104th and Portland, and are preparing to bid another 4 miles of pipeline. In design, Southwest is a proposed booster station at roughly 104th and Portland. It's just in the preliminary design stage. As you can see, we plan progressive transmission mains that are the ultimate solution to the issue. Staff has worked out a detailed action plan. I'll describe a few more things that we've done in just a second, but as we've just looked at the CIP slide, want to mention that what we hope to do is look at the CIP to potentially move up the pumping system that's planned at Southwest 104th and Portland to help increase overall pump capacity going into that area on a permanent basis.
What size is that line?
It's a 48-inch line, and it will parallel another 48-inch line.
Well, is this line the ultimate one might go to Hefner?
No, it's a separate line that will go to Hefner, and likely going the other side of the city. This line has been sized to meet forecasted demands for the next 30 or 40 years in the Southwest region. So it's a conceptual proposal, and then let's talk about the action plan. We have completed installation of temporary pumps at both the booster stations. As we have seen them work successfully. They have solved customer problems. Again, we lost a pump yesterday. Pressure's decreased to about 35 pounds. They're running between 55 and 45 in the area generally, which is acceptable. It's not the highest pressure we have in the system. We do have pressure up to about 80 pounds in parts of the system, but it's well more than meeting standards, and we consider that good. We have been working on starting up the Oberholzer plant. The Oberholzer plant has had some problems with its clear wells, which continue, but we do plan to start the Oberholzer plant. It is unlikely that that plant's operation would have solved this particular problem as we look at the forecast. We are analyzing at this point all the performance of the pumps that serve the area for possible individual substitutions. We've developed a 30, 90 day 1-year, 5-year, 10-year concept. We're making certain we've targeted and resolved this problem. We'll be working to define what kind of motor upgrades and pump upgrades we may need. We'll be making some, once the peak is over, we'll make some minor changes to correct the service area boundaries. These areas are large, but two separate pressure zones within that area, small compared to the size of the other pressure zones, makes them a little more, they need a little more analysis. Then in the next 30 days, we'd like to formalize our recommendations about how to adjust the capital program. We believe that there's flexibility. I want to bring you a good, solid recommendation. I know that having adequate and consistently reliable pumping is critically important, and I'm struggling with, in the recommendation, the time that I think it will take to build a good pump station, even if we work as hard as we can, as fast as we can. So we want to bring you a recommendation that doesn't do something temporarily that's a throwaway, but also produces something more reliable for our customers than what they've seen in the last couple of weeks. We think as few as 100, maybe 300 houses have been impacted by this low pressure. Again, in the system, if you are seeing you are probably all individually seeing lower pressure at your house. If your neighbors turn on the sprinklers on either side of you, that is the nature of how the water system works in the summertime.
Is there a level of water pressure that if it drops to a certain point would affect our ability to fight fire?
Not specifically. The ODEQ design pressure is 25 psi. I'll ask the fire chief for more details. Typical pumper truck is about 1,500 gallons a minute. So that's one of the things we want to look at in the process, is making certain that there is 1,500 gallons a minute to fight any fire. And the tanks are there for that purpose as well.
But if you have 25 pounds of pressure on a 60-inch line and you're fighting a fire, you're better off than maybe even having 75 pounds of pressure on an 8-inch line. And so it's really a combination, and then those are all affected by how close those points might be to a storage facility or to a water plant where the pumps are putting in. So it's a more complex model than just some standalone numbers.
In addition, the fire trucks are able to pull water. There are operating pumps that are reboosting pressure. Of course, we would like to deliver them pressure that they don't have to reboost. I'm happy to take feedback. That's our plan briefly our plan of action. We can provide you more details. I wanted to get this out on the table, given that the last time we spoke, I said there weren't any problems, because there weren't.
How soon will the people out this area see the effects of these improvements?
The temporary pumps have made a significant difference. I would say pressure is 20 pounds higher than it was last week, possibly more. So we are delivering more water into the area. We're pushing it harder down the pipes that bring water to them. The improvements are each mile of pipe that we complete helps add a very tiny amount of pressure to the water that's getting out to the area. Adding the new pump station is the big volume of higher pressure that will raise pressure in the entire area. At that point, we will have resolved this low pressure area and another one that's east of the airport at about 54th Street, another high ground location. The pump station, I think, is the key thing, and the question is how fast can you build it responsibly? We believe we can set additional pumps at our existing pump stations easily before next summer. We believe that the temporary pumps can be operated a little bit better than they have, so that they don't go offline accidentally as they did yesterday. But finally, pump station, we were planning on 3 or 4 years to complete the pump station. We don't have that much time, I think, for overall reliability.
Is the problem significant enough that we should think about it from a planning standpoint? That's an area south of where we're talking about and west of where we're talking about that is a very attractive development area. And is the fix that we're looking at now, would it just fix the current situation, or would it expand us so that we could handle more development in that area?
We think the pump station is key. The large additional pump station at Southwest 104th and Portland is the key to being more comfortable about additional development. We need our analysis of the system is not showing the same peak demand that we're actually experiencing. So we need to go back and figure out what error we're making in our modeling that didn't understand this, even though we had already looked at that, recognizing that when we prepared the Water Master Plan in 2003, we hadn't taken into adequate consideration the growth that we saw on the turnpike. So we've been making corrections for that, and yet we had a customer service delivery problem.
I ask that because, I mean, there's a side of me that takes a great deal of satisfaction in being able to tell people that what a quality system that we have, and then all the things we're able to do and how well we're financed and all the different things that I think we're all proud of as people that have been part of the system for a while. On the other hand, I would have to think about that if I thought that what we were doing was trying to solve this problem, and the result of that was to provide more expansion, which would then put us in a greater crimp as we move forward. I mean, it seems to me the question is, do we fix it for where we are now and talk to people about deferring development perhaps, or do we just go ahead and as some of us have argued, go ahead and lead with the infrastructure and go ahead and put the infrastructure there and then anticipate the development's going to follow because we've done that. I mean, that's kind of a planning question, but it seems to me it's an economic question also, because the rubber's getting ready to meet the road here with regard to what we're going to do financially to make this happen. I didn't intend for that just to be a statement. I thought, is there some viewpoint as to which we're doing, or are we doing either one? Am I completely off base? You can just go ahead and look at me and we'll go to the next topic.
I think, I think Marsh's plan's pretty good. And I think, it's always a mixed signal where, when to hit the brakes and when to hit the accelerator on these types of things. And you don't want to be inconsistent in your messaging as you go forward on that. And I think it's amazing to me that the peaks aren't any higher than they are right now. If we were sitting there 15 million gallons or 20 million gallons a day higher than we are today, I might say, we're in trouble. I don't quite understand why that's the case. Marcia has a much better system to work with than when I was water director. We had holes in the system that we've been able to patch up over the years, but we didn't have as a reliable system, 15 years or so ago. And it seems to me right now that yes, we had problems out in Southwest, and we've done some things to address that, to help that out. And I think the system, our messaging right now is that we're okay, but use your water prudently as we go forward. But there's not a right answer. I mean, that could be if all of a sudden the usage for, and I'm not sure why it's holding where it is, but if it pumps up 20 million gallons a day overnight, then that's the wrong, that's the wrong message. And
I'm not advocating that we send a message to curtail development or that we say, come on down, we're going to fix. But I think whatever we do, I'd like to know what we're doing at the time. I'm not The decision about what we do depends on knowing what we're trying to accomplish. That's another debate, and perhaps not a debate for the Water Trust, but a debate for the City Council. But it seems to me we ought to know if this just fixes the problem. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. And the pride I personally have in being part of the system insists that we fix the problem. I mean, that's where I'm going to be there without any question. The question is, do we build to a larger capacity and thereby encourage future development? If I've said it, I've already said it once, right? Okay.
Yes, sir. Staff owes you those kinds of options, and the crush of working with the problem has not allowed us to bring that to you. But I did want to tell you what's going on because it is significant. It is from my perspective, an important thing that we're doing for our customers to solve the problem temporarily while we look at the long range.
Councilman White, I'm not sure I totally understand what's going on with our per capita usage. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem to be, 20 years ago, we had growth in both population and per capita usage. Now we're having growth in population and almost stagnation, if maybe even a slight decline in per capita. Is that right, Marcia? Or
Yes.
Is it just stagnated?
Yeah, it's stagnated, I would say.
And I think it's because of more water-efficient toilets and people more aware of xeriscaping and drip sprinkler systems that are going in, and not only in residential areas, but a lot in commercial areas where they're just smarter about how they do that thing. Right. They're doing this stuff. There's lower water dishwashers. There's lower water washing machines that are going out there, right. And those are all contributing to it. But we're in a little anomaly. Since water systems began, the per capita usage has been going up, and then all of a sudden, within the last, 5-10 years, it's kind of stagnated. And so it's a little bit
true across the country, or is that just true?
And it's true for a lot of utilities.
Yeah.
Well, then that's probably the answer.
So, but we're sitting there, and we've been watching trends for 100 years, and then all of a sudden, it's leveled off. And so I think we need to kind of digest it and watch it a little bit to see what happens.
But I don't think we ought to overreact and not go to the expense and trouble of constructing it with some future. I think we solely meet the demands of today. We have to go back at some point in time. We know reasonably sure we'll have to go back and rebuild it.
Right. Well, and as you pointed out, there's a difference between total volume use in the system and per capita use. And we all expect total volume use to grow over time as our community grows and we continue to add population and jobs and things. The interesting part is that per capita use, and that's, I think, because of awareness and efficiency and conservation. And you hope that stays fairly level and maybe drops a little bit. But we definitely need to plan and assume that we can grow, because certainly with our cost structures, I think we're attractive for development, and we need to make sure that we're always planning those next probably 3-4 steps ahead.
Mr. Chairman, that's a real complex question.
Yeah.
It just is. There's
if I didn't know it was a complex question, I would have known it based on the answers that I'm getting.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your feedback.
Any other comments on the presentation? Next item is the items for individual consideration. The first one's item 7A, which is approving a request for proposals for scale and corrosion chemicals.
Move approval.
Motion and a second to approve item 7A. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman, your audience may wonder why on earth someone would be buying scale chemicals. And that is it's not for the outside of the pipe, it's for the inside of the pipe. That's your anti-red water chemical that we add to the system.
Any further comments or questions? Voting, please. Item 7A is approved. Item 7B is a receipt of a proposal from Quail Ridge Hunting and Sporting Clays to operate a facility at 7632 Southwest 149th. Have a second.
Second.
I have some experience. I've dealt with this gentleman that has made the proposal, and from my standpoint, it fits very well with what we've talked about, the differences that Draper Reservation can be put to compared to the differences that say we have at Hefner and Overholt and some of the other places. I've talked to a lot of, I'm not a sporting clay person, but I've talked to a lot of people that are, and they're very excited about the possibility of having a facility of this quality that close to Oklahoma City. I think it's going to be a real good thing. He's here today. If anybody has any questions of him, I could have him come down, but he's just waiting to talk to all of us, I'm sure.
Well, why don't you step up and tell us what your plans are?
This is Mr. Dave Martin, the proposer.
Thank you for having me. I currently operate Quail Ridge Hunting Sporting Clays in Tecumseh, which is about 30 miles from the center of Oklahoma City. We host many large corporate and charitable shoots out there. Well, currently, we do upland bird hunting and sporting clays, and I'm going to keep the upland hunting out in Tecumseh, where it's more wild. But this property came available. Councilman White and I had spoke a couple of years ago in Miss Slaughter, and we've been looking for a piece of land that would be closer, because this is kind of like golf with a shotgun. People don't want to drive an hour to an hour and a half to do an hour of fun activity and then come back. This would fit perfectly because now we're basically 15 miles from Bricktown, which opens up to some. We host Oklahoma State Championship that brings in over 250 people. Big oil field shoots. I have one next at the end of this month. That'll bring in almost 300 people. They fly in from Houston because it's a big oil field shoot also. So this would fit perfect because then they can stay right here in the city, in the Bricktown area. Currently, they're staying in Shawnee, Midwest City, that area out to the east. Well, this would bring them in closer, and they've mentioned, and typically these are your upper class, higher end people who do this because it is an expensive sport. But it's not so expensive that we can't get the father-sons out there to teach them shotgun safety and that nature. Now, this is shotgun-only facility. The typical range of a shotgun is 200 yards. And I have designed a course out there in Tecumseh, and I've also contracted with Gene Sears out of El Reno, who is a world champion course designer and person that would help design this course to do maximum lead recovery because, number one, it's good for the environment. Number two, it's good for my pocketbook. If we can recover the lead that is shot out there, we sell it back to the shooters or back to the shooting organizations. And that also fits into the EPA. If people wonder about lead, when we come in and clean up a facility, it is put right back into almost perfect standards. As in my letter stated, it said something about they gave me a reference to a club in Dallas. They cleaned it up, and now it's a city park where they have playground equipment and that. My basic thing would be to take that old house that's already there, rehab it, make that into the office, build a pavilion about 28 by 80. I'd like to seat about 300 people because as it grows, I need seating capacity because they put on lunches, dinners when they treat their clientele. And then a little storage facility for our clays. I went and looked at the storage, the little barn that's there now. I believe that needs to be taken down. It's in pretty bad shape. I mean, the foundation's deteriorated. And I don't think I'd like that liability, so we would just remove that. And then a parking lot, of course, that fits it. But the course is just a graveled trail that goes throughout the property, and safety zones are set. And like it done with concrete, on the pavilion, nothing. I want it really nice to where it fits in with the Draper. I love what some of the other pavilions look like that have been done in the Draper recreational area. So we would try to match that.
Any other comments or any comments? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
We have a motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve. Further comments? Voting, please. Items approved. Next item is item 7C, a resolution authorizing payment to BNSF for a pipeline license.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item 7C. Comments? Voting, please. 7C is approved. Item 7D, a resolution approving a project monitoring the water distribution system.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the software system, so forth, for monitoring the system. Comments, questions? Voting, please. It's approved. New business. Comments from trustees, staff. Oh, you were turning it off. I thought you might have turned it on. Citizens, we are adjourned. Thank you.